All right, and it is exactly 2 p.m., so let's get started. First of all, I want to welcome all of you. Thank you so much for making time for this webinar. I'm really excited to share some practices to help you fully integrate priority matrix with your workday. As a quick note, for any of those who have never been to one of my webinars before, my name is Bella, and I work on the customer success team for Priority Matrix. So in addition to hosting webinars, I also set up private training sessions for teams, as well as take one-on-one calls with our customers. In one of these calls, if you've never had one of them, we talk about specific problems that a customer may be experiencing and tailor unique solutions to that problem. So if you have never taken advantage of our one-on-one calls, I highly recommend that you do that as well. I see webinars and one-on-one calls as two different sides to the same coin. So I definitely encourage you to jump on and take advantage of a one-on-one call with one of our specialists as well. As you can see, I've added my contact info. Feel free to reach out to me at any point in the future. You can consider me one of your points of contact to our customer success team. And I do want to note that there will be a Q&A session at the end. You should already have access to a question box, so feel free to pop any questions that you have in as soon as they come to your mind. Even if they're not particularly topical to the webinar, feel free to ask and I will respond privately to you. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions and answering as many of them as I can. Finally, I do want to note that there will be some information on this slide deck that might be pretty detailed. So if you're looking at the slide, do know that you will have access to this slide deck in the future. I'm going to share it with each one of you. So I've actually designed the slide deck to be a sort of review and a resource for after the webinar when you're actually opening up Priority Matrix tomorrow and you just want to remember small details. So do know that you will have access to that. So you don't have to, you can just sit back and enjoy and think of questions to ask rather than worrying about taking notes. All right. So the topic here is fairly straightforward, but I did want to sort of give you a brief little rundown of exactly what we will be covering. First and foremost, it is, as you can see, it will be split into 4 different parts. The first 3 parts will be the average day, the routine day, starting the day right, the workflow throughout the day, and then finishing strong. And then the 4th part will be talking about non-routine scenarios. So, of course, there are many different non-routine scenarios, but 2 in particular are emergencies, whether it's an emergency that you are experiencing or someone on your team. Ways that Priority Matrix can actually create a framework so that you can really focus on those emergencies and know that everything else is being taken care of. Finally, I think this is pretty pertinent considering that it is the end of summer or beginning of August. So either you have maybe been on a vacation or you're planning one, hopefully. I actually have some practices, ways that Priority Matrix can help you prepare for vacations and then actually make sure that nothing is forgotten while on the vacation so that you can actually take your vacation and relax and then come back and everything will be, nothing will be on fire simply because you took a couple days off. So I think one thing to note before we begin is that I really, the day is, of course, cyclical in nature, and I think that a Priority Matrix process and a Priority Matrix routine should be seen that way as well, right? We want to start the day right, and then we also want to finish strong. And by that, I don't simply mean try to get as many things completed, as you see the minute hand drawing to 5 o'clock or 6:30 or 6 o'clock, right? I think that one of the most important things actually is making sure that everything you do at the end of your workday is supporting a successful day the next day. So as we will see, we're going to start beginning, but at the end, we're also going to be sort of, in a certain sense, going on to the next day's beginning as well. All right. let us jump in then. So the first part is starting strong, going to work, what you're going to do before you actually start what we like to think of as actual work, right? We ramp up, we grab a cup of coffee, we talk to people, say, how's your day going? And then we sit down and we try to jump in, right? And there are some practices that I've developed on my own and also talking to customers that I think really do help you really understand where you need to jump in, how quickly you need to do that, etc. So again, like I mentioned, there are some specific details like talking about project one, using the master list to look at everything, and then opening up your feed. And I have added these details for later on if you do want to consult the slide deck. But actually what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into Priority Matrix and walk you through that in the system, because that's really what it's all about, right? Okay, so step one. I think that the most important thing is opening up your number one project. And you might wonder, what do you mean by the number one project? What I mean by that is the priority matrix equivalent to the back pocket list, something that we've got with us all the time. It's our first instinct to open. We're constantly looking at it. This is probably the project that if it's 11 p.m. at night and suddenly it occurs to you that you need to remember something, you open up your priority matrix on your phone app and put it in this number one list. So when I talk to people, a lot of questions they tend to ask are, well, how many projects do I need? And my answer isn't technically an answer. It's more like a process. So I think that everyone should start with one project and basically put everything that they're thinking of there. Then they will very quickly be able to see organically how maybe they want to actually corral these particular types of items in a separate project because it has to do with a particular initiative. But that doesn't mean that you should completely scrap your miscellaneous to-do project, because we always need this number one miscellaneous catch-all most important project. So for example, here's one Bella to do, and then say I have a colleague named John. He has a John to do. And it's actually great if you actually share these projects with your team, because it's really, really helpful when you want to understand what an entire team's priorities are. So our first step is opening up that project one, and in this case, it is Bella to do, and then check for items you've left yourself from the evening before. So actually, like I mentioned, it's very cyclical. Now we're talking about the evening before this morning, right? And when we get to the evening, we're going to be talking about steps to make sure that tomorrow morning is, as primed for success as possible. So the thinking here is that this is the project where if you're about to head out for the day and you remember something, you can pop it in there, add a due date, and be certain that it'll be attended to. I talk to a lot of people who are frustrated because they end up spending more time in the office than they planned because they're ready to leave and then they remember one thing. And technically, maybe it doesn't warrant them staying for another hour in the office, but they're afraid that they're going to forget it. So they end up doing it then instead of going home and having dinner with their family, or they go home and, lock themselves in their office, their home office, and get to it. So I think that one of the most important things is understanding that this project can be a space where you can put an item, you can add a due date, and you can be confident that the next morning, 8:30, 9 a.m., you'll see that project again, you won't have forgotten it, and it'll actually get done. So it'll help you, it'll support you actually leaving the office on time. And say you're on the train going home and you remember something, rather than stressing out that you didn't remember it before going to the office, you can just pull out Priority Matrix on your mobile phone and add that item. So that is the first thing that I would suggest. Going to project number one, as I like to call it, for the lack of, you can call it whatever you want. You could call it #1 or, most important project, anything you like. The most important thing, of course, that it is there for you. So you go here and you check for notes from the night before. And I do think that, we have quadrant one, which is for fires. I think that it can be helpful to actually just pop them in fires, not because necessarily it's going to be a fire tomorrow morning. but it is something that was definitely important that you remember. So your eye will immediately be drawn to this. And then, of course, once you're confident that you haven't forgotten it since last night, you can always move it elsewhere if you want. Next, I suggest that you open up Master List. So if you don't already use Master List on a daily basis, I definitely encourage you to look into it and see how it could help. Master List is the compiled list of all your tasks from all your projects. So right now, I have 6 tasks, a pretty small number, 6 projects, a pretty small number of projects as priority matrix accounts go. This is a specific account that I have for webinars. But as we can see, when we compile all the tasks, there's already a pretty big list. It's really great to have that compiled, powerful bird's eye view. Yes, so I just want to sort of share something that actually one of our attendees brought up, and I think it's a really, really, concise sentence that really illustrates what I'm going for. Plan today for tomorrow, right? So at the end of the day, sometimes we're focused on getting out of the office, or sometimes we're focused on what did or didn't happen that day. But we have to remember that today we can also make changes and make strides to make tomorrow the best day that it can be. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I do encourage, comments and thoughts as we go throughout. I love to hear what you guys are thinking. And the way that you would word something, because sometimes just thinking of the way that one other person verbalizes can really help, make sure that everyone's on the same page. So thank you for that. So going back to the master list, as you can see, it's fairly, extensive already. But don't get overwhelmed, right? This is not meant to overwhelm you, but you need to, you can really, pause and appreciate the power of the fact that now you have an entire list of everything that could possibly pertain to you that you should be worrying about. So what I like to do then is I like to go to the filter on the top right and then filter it by items owned by me, because as you see, I work in a team and these are all items that could be owned by other people as well. So I will filter it down, and this is a much more streamlined list of items that I am directly responsible for. Next, I like to sort by due sooner, which I already have, meaning that the item at the top has the soonest due date. Even if it's, for example, 2 minutes before the second one, it is in order of when it's due. And I do have one quick question from someone about adding the icons from the tasks, adding icons to the task. So I do want to quickly just jump to the side and answer that question. Every item has an item detail that you can click on, and it'll show up whether you're in the matrix project or the project view. To the left of the title, it says add an icon. Here you can select an icon. I'm a very visual person, as you might have already been able to see from my slide deck. So I really, really like to do this. And then you can also sort by icons. So for example, this is a person. So I have the icon of the person, and it helps me sort of visually differentiate what I'm going to do. The red different color icons are based on the due date. So you can add that by adding a due date, and I will get to that in one moment. Thank you so much for your question. So basically, I have ordered it, filtered it, owned by me, and ordered it by due sooner. So now we have all quadrants, but now I'm going to filter it a little bit more. I want to look at overdue items. Looks like I've got one overdue item, call with Carrie. I don't know exactly what happened, why it's overdue. Maybe she didn't pick up or something happened, right? It's really important for me to look at this now and make sure that I will absolutely get to this before it becomes any more late, or before it comes more late than it already is. Next, I'm going to go to items due today. So now I can see there are these 3 items, this report, meeting time, and editing the brief. And then very quickly, if we jump back here, meeting time question mark. This is an example of something that I probably remembered from the night before, quickly added it because I don't want to sit down and hammer out the meeting time, right? But because I added this and I added a due date, and I put it here, I'm actually thinking about it this morning. So now what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go to all quadrants. And as we can see, it's arranged in due dates. So first it's red, and then here's the orange, green, it's due in 1 day, due in 1 week, and due in 6 months. My taxes are due in 6 months. So now what I would suggest is actually going through and starring each item that I want to complete today. So of course, I'm going to star the overdue items, and the items that are due today. And then I get to make a decision. Next, I get to look at everything else I have, and I get to say, what do I wish to do today, right? Because we can, sometimes it's most important to sort of carve out our goals, right? And in the sense, when we're starring these items, we're reaching for the stars, we're trying to see, this is what I think I can do today, and let's try to make it happen. So of course, I'm probably not going to call Alan. I could do this today instead of doing this tomorrow, but I decided that it was okay to wait till tomorrow. So actually, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to find all the items that, I would like to do today. It's not imperative, but it would be pretty awesome if I could get it all done today. So I'm going to start this. And you know what? I think I'm going to do this. And the truth is, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe a new fire will develop, right after lunchtime, and I'm not actually going to be able to get all these tasks done. That's okay. That's why we sort of prioritize that, because when we know these are the items that I need to do, these are the items that I can do and want to do. So this is simply an example of going through, and a lot of my customers use this. They'll just go through. They'll do this on their own, and sometimes they also do this as a team. And then I do want to make a note. There's a question about whether it's possible to have a master view of one project. That's a really great question. So there are a couple different things you can do. Right now I have it on no grouping because I just want to see the list of due sooner to due last, right? I can also group it by project. And then I can go, oh, team project due first. Or of course, if I only want the master list of Bella, that's where project tags would come in. So you can add micro or macro tags. So I'm going to add number 1, right? Then that filter not only applies here, but it can apply to the master list as well. And this is how you would get the master list of only one project if you wanted to seriously narrow it down. Thanks for the question. But of course, you can also just group it by project as well and focus on a particular project. But I'm going to go back to no grouping because I like to see the entire sort of progress of all of the items from soonest to last. So now, like I said, I'm now going to be starring items, which I am shooting to complete. And then what we can do here, we can filter it even further. We can filter it by starred item. And there I have it now. This is the rundown of everything that I hope to complete today. So basically, that's sort of looking at what I have to do and tracking it. That's one of the aspects of really starting out the day well. And then the next thing that I would say in terms of starting strong is actually looking at the feed. So the feed is actually a time-stamped history of everything that's been done. And I think it's really great because after you've sort of set your plan and you understand where you want to go, you can sort of open up the feed to what everyone else is doing, right? Get caught up on things that are happening, around you. For our team in particular, we have people in many different countries. So my 1 a.m. is someone else's 2 p.m. So it's really important for me to check and see what did they do while I was sleeping during their work day. But especially if you are all in one time, even if you are in one time zone, it is, great to just open it up, look and see conversations that people were having about different items, because you have the specific concrete goals for yourself, right? But it is important to be part of that team and understand, what's going on and how you can help as well. So those are some of my tips for making sure that you start out strong, jumping first to your top project, then filtering and using the master view to really get a sense of, if you could just snap your fingers and make this day the best day possible, what are the items that would be accomplished? Now I'm going to actually jump back and I want to talk about workflow throughout the day. So again, there's probably a bit more detail than you would need to read through at the moment, but this is just for your later reference. I think one important thing to talk about when we mention workflow is I have 1, 2, 3, right? But to be honest, it's probably going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 over and over again. So don't think of this as just a one-time thing. This is an example of what the flow looks like throughout the day. Once you're already, once you already have your cup of coffee, you've got your plan, you know what's been going on. What are you doing? So you're going to jump back after checking out the feed. Probably going to stay in master list and open the top item, look at the details, etc. The next, I encourage you to keep the feed open so that you can, make the choice. If you've been working intensely on a top item for 45 minutes, you're getting a little stressed, maybe your shoulders are getting tight and you need a break. There's two choices. People just need a break from one project, right? Sometimes you just need to take 2 minutes off and sort of regroup, right? And there are two options. I think sometimes we hold ourselves to these standards of not moving around, not multitasking, staying focused, that we end up wasting time taking that break, staring out the window. However, you could choose to keep the feed open and, mindfully decide, what, it's time for a little break. I'm going to upload a file, answer a question, and this is what I like to think of as positive, selective multitasking. Jumping out, doing something, feeling that rush of accomplishment, and jumping back in, refreshed to work on that high-level task again. And then, of course, thirdly, I do want to focus on emails, email integration, email prioritization, and what that looks like. So without further ado, I'm going to jump back in to Priority Matrix. This is a very technical webinar focusing on the exact details of what is happening. So next, like I mentioned, I'd open up Project 1. So the first one is Call with Carrie. So maybe Carrie couldn't make it, so the most important thing to do is probably, send her an email or ask someone if we've received any calls from her, anyone else has been in contact with her. But the most important thing is, get this closed, get it back to square. Maybe it just involves rescheduling. Maybe the final decision is that we're actually going to talk next Tuesday. Now this has changed the due date, so that's going to update it and that's going to send it in a different direction. So basically, it's going to allow you to then run to the next. As you can see, it's 5 days, and it'll filter it by time again in a second. The next item is please finish the report ASAP, right? And so what I'll probably do is I probably have the report file here, or maybe it is a link to a document right here. I'll double click and I'll access that, and I'm working on the report, right? And this is a perfect example of making sure that throughout the day, of course, this is my top priority, but at the same time, reports can take a lot of focus, And maybe after 15 minutes, I'm just ready to sort of shake it all out. And what I think of as a positive way to mentally shake it all out is to stay sort of open to the idea that, you know, maybe a team member is going to assign something to me, meaning that there would be a action needed box in red here. Right now I don't have anything, but you know, this is an example. What I would go here is I'll probably go back to the item in my project, see what I need to do. I would probably reset to make sure I'm not losing any notifications just because of my filter is on, and I'm going to work on this. But of course, if someone asks me a question, sends it to me, etc., and it's been 20 minutes and I'm starting to get kind of antsy and my shoulders are tight and I just need to feel, you know, I just need a little win to keep going through this high impact, high focus task like finishing a long report, maybe I'll jump out. I'll see this comment, you know, I'll quickly upload a file. Maybe it's signing off on something, answering a question, responding to an email. Doesn't matter what it is, but the idea is keeping your feed open, keeping your notifications on so that you can actually use those moments when your brain just literally cannot do anything else with that report. So in my slide, I mentioned that basically, you know, you're going to respond to questions and pings. So I just want to illustrate what a ping is. In our team, we'll say, if we want to just quickly remind someone about something, we'll just say ping Bella, and then it'll send an update, etc. So of course, this is just me on this account at the moment, not a lot of activity. But if this was an active team, there would be things coming through all the time. And just because you can set a, you know, take a break and respond to things doesn't mean you have to. It's already always in context of your priorities, right? But sometimes your priority is to shake it out, relax, and then come back refreshed. Finally, I mentioned emails, right? What do we do with emails? There are very few people that I talk to that don't feel that they have too many emails, too much time is required, and it's kind of very stressful because there's something so urgent about receiving an email in your inbox. So I'm going to actually jump over to Gmail, and I just want to note, even if you use iMail, Outlook, Lotus Notes, I'm just going to demonstrate in Gmail, but you can always drag and drop an email into any matrix. So for example, here's my promotions inbox, but say I just received this email, right? And say it's not about lifestyle design, instead it's actually a important email from someone I'm working with, right? I have to also prioritize what I do, right? As soon as we get an email in our inbox, we immediately feel the urge, like if we were the perfect person, we would respond to it right away. But the truth is, like anything, you do have to prioritize. A lot of times people tell you, you know, this is what you got to do with emails. If you can respond to it in X amount of time, then do respond to it. And if you can't, you know, put it on your list or something like that. The problem with that, I think, is it totally does not take into consideration the fact that you need to think about whether you should respond to it. Maybe you have the absolute power to respond to it in 20 seconds, right? And maybe that makes you feel awesome. But if you're taking those 20 seconds away from something else, then you're actually not allocating your resources. So let's say that this is very important and I can respond to it in 20 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes. I'll do it. But say I can still respond to it because I have the ability, I have all the information I needed, I'm ready to respond, etc. But it's just not on my priority list in the place where it would require an immediate response. I've downloaded the Priority Matrix plugin, which means that there's an embedded button in my email. So I can send it to any of these projects. So I'm going to say I'm going to send it here. Quadrant 2. It's not a fire. I'm going to send it to Priority Matrix. And I have forwarded, and then maybe I'll go next. Okay, maybe this is actually, you know, it's not even, I don't even need to act on it, but it actually does have resources that'll help me complete my projects. I'm going to send it to Quadrant 4 where I put all my resources and I'm sending it. I'm just going to give it another example. Say this is actually one of those Quadrant 3 emails. They take up my time, they feel urgent. And I do have a question. I do want to clarify whether we're talking about Priority Matrix. Priority Matrix is available on a Mac. It's available on Windows, Mac, your tablets, your iPad, your Android, or your iPhone. So it's available. And then, yeah, no matter whether you use a Mac or a PC, you can integrate email as well. Thank you for your question. So say this is one of those Quadrant 3 emails, right? It feels more urgent than it is. Here's the example of how I would mindfully delegate it or postpone it, right? I'm putting it in to do, but I'm putting it in Quadrant 3, and maybe I assign it to someone else. Or maybe I assign it to myself, then I'm going to go back to Priority Matrix and add a due date like a week later, because it can actually technically, in relation to my priorities, be postponed. So if we go back to this project, we see that the emails are here. So here's the resource email, and here's the email that I'm postponing. And then here is the email that I would like to respond to as soon as possible, but maybe I couldn't do it in 20 seconds, or maybe I need resources. Maybe I need more information. In order to ensure that I don't forget, I could even say it's due as soon as 20 minutes, meaning it'll be on the top of my list when we go back to the master list. If I need someone to help me, I can invite followers. I can invite Bella, say, hey, remember when you talked to this person? Can you tell me X? Or I can assign it to my boss and say, hey, I don't know what I should do, let me know. Or I can even just say, hey, he wants your report, can you attach so I can email? So this is an example of setting aside time. Great question again. So you can actually download any of those, whether it's Mac, Windows, or the plugin. You can go to appfluence.com and you can go to downloads, and then it'll give you the option to download the plugin, the Mac version. And I see that someone else has raised their hand. Feel free to put a question in the comment box. Otherwise, I am going to continue. So this is a way that, again, you can stay, present focused. You can go to your inbox, but then you don't have to be sucked into your inbox, right? Because that's the most important thing. Our inbox isolates you from your actual priorities. Worrying too much about this, which I can do in 20 minutes or an hour, distracts me from this. Finish the report as soon as possible. All right, so let's say we finished the report, great job, meeting time, call with Carrie is rescheduled. Let's go back to master list. Let's go back to the master list. Sorry, one second. And let us, again, go to starred items. And let's see what else we have. So edit the brief, jump back. A couple more hours pass. Let's say we do this while we're editing the brief. Someone asks you a question. We've got a great little team, work jam here at the moment. So, everyone's supporting each other. Perfect. Let us go back. So I actually have a question about what I've been doing based on due dates. So as you guys might have seen, that I've actually been just typing in due date. So of course you can set a due date here. Thank you for that question. I should have explained that earlier. So you can actually just make comments in Priority Matrix to change due dates or to change your effort or to change your progress. So for example, let me go. Let's create a new task and we'll see in the item details. It says, did you know you can write comments to make changes to this item? So here is a little log of different commands. You can mark something complete, done, and I really love the due date feature because this allows me to say due tomorrow, due next Friday, due in 20 minutes, due September 15th, 2025. You can do that. Whoop, 2205. Wow, that would be a long time coming. 2025. Instead of clicking through to 2025, not that I am organized enough to actually be looking ahead to 2025, but that is just one example. And it says it's due in 8 years, so now I can look ahead on my in my master list and see that in 8 years I need to do this. And I'm actually gonna just clear that, or my reports will just be like going way too far in advance. So now that we've done this, again, like I mentioned, we're going to go throughout the day, of course. I'm going to go back to my starred items belonging to me. Maybe I responded to this. Let's just say, this is one of those and then, yes, so in terms of due dates, I have one more question about calendars. So they're asking, can I integrate it with a calendar? The answer is yes. So basically, you can set up integration. If you go to View, Calendars, this will give you a URL. So then if you go to Google Calendar or Outlook Calendar, you always have the option to add a calendar via URL. So you'll create a new calendar with this URL, which means that as soon as you add a due date, for example, to this task, it'll be sent to your calendar. So you can sort of see side by side the calendar that you make all your other appointments with, and then everything else as well. Great question. Thank you so much. So let's just say this is a time lapse of a really productive day, and then I make a note here and I comment here and someone asks me a question, I'm able to take a break, and wow, this is just a great day. Getting so much done. Yay. Okay, everything that I hope to do today is done. And I see that we have 2 more hands raised at the moment. Again, just you can pop it in the Q&A box. And if you have any questions that I haven't answered by the end of the session, we will have a Q&A session. So don't fear about that. So now, most productive day ever, right? How do we end it in a way that is productive, that kind of sets you up for productivity tomorrow, the day after? Now, to be completely honest, the problem, one thing that's really interesting is that probably the end of the day is the biggest example of lost productivity potential. And I have one more quick question about the completed tasks. Can they be moved to the finished category? Yes, so automatically, let me just quickly show you, automatically as soon as, and it depends on whether or not, this is just taking a second to sync, but it automatically is moved to the finished category. So you don't need to do anything. So right now, let's go to finished items, and there we see all the finished items. So that's a really good point. So basically, if we go, starred items owned by me, just going to take a second unfinished items. Now we have nothing because all of the finished items have been moved to the finished category. Yeah, of course, it's my pleasure. So as you can see, you know, the master list and the filter is so powerful because so much of that work is done for you. You don't have to worry about finding all your finished items. And this is actually a great point because it sort of brings me to our one of our next points. So just quickly jumping back, I'm gonna, whoops. So many times at the end of the day, it is sort of an opportunity to lose potential productivity, right? And it's not because we're slower and we're not completing tasks, but in regard to, you know, when you're done completing tasks, basically, when you're done completing tasks, you know, all you want to do probably is leave, right? You're tired, you're probably hungry, you want to see your family. You know, this icon is probably a perfect example for a lot of, you know, no matter how great of a day it's been, no matter how much you love your job, you're still tired. We all have a limited amount of energy. So we're kind of ready to leave, right? So we probably don't immediately think, hey, I should just think about work before I leave work. I'm done with work, but I should still think about work so that I can come back and work tomorrow. But I think it's super important actually to practice a couple of these rituals. First of all, make sure you've marked everything complete. And then as that really wonderful question, filter items to completed and check out the master list. And then I suggest opening up Gantt Chart and reports, and then actually looking at top projects and creating last minute items for tomorrow. I quickly ran through that again, but I'm actually going to, I'm actually going to show you. So again, the slide deck is more of a for later on. So like I said, make sure you've completed everything, right? So we have a couple things, but these weren't starred items, so everything that we wanted to complete, we've completed. A lot of times we get so focused about, you know, keep moving on and working fast that we forget to complete items. And technically, like, it's no harm, no foul, but at the same time, from the perspective of your productivity and your understanding of your productivity, it's really important that you complete items. You know, for example, a scientific experiment, you have to make notes all the time, right? You have to say, we did this, we did that. If you think of your productivity as an experiment, you do need to sort of track that, because then you can actually see how productive everything was. So along those lines now, I'm going to filter back to starred, finished items, owned by me, and I'm going to go to the master list. And look at that. This is the comprehensive list of everything that I wanted to get done today. And guess what? I did it. And it's so empowering to look at what you've done. And you know, from a neuroscience perspective, you know, seeing everything you've completed, checking things off actually, you know, triggers the release of the hormone dopamine in your brain. So it's just a great, you know, opportunity to take good advantage of those feel-good hormones. So next, after you've made sure you've marked everything complete, like I said, you filter by completed, check out your great accomplishments. Now I suggest two things: Gantt chart and reports. So I would actually reset to default and then go to owned by me. And let's go to the Gantt chart. The Gantt chart is sort of a history of a timeline of your projects. These green bars represent the span of the project. And the Gantt chart is sensitive to due dates, which is, again, why I think it's so great that we have those conversation commands, which can allow you to quickly add due dates. So due dates help all your responsibilities show up in the Gantt chart. And we can look at the global Gantt chart and compare different projects. Or you can actually, for example, let's look at Bella to do, right? I'm going to look at the Gantt chart for this project. This is what it looks like. And we're going to go down to weeks. So this is a very limited example of what it would look like. I'm sure you're thinking, well, I have 20 times the amount of items. Even more so, this will really help you, because here's the red line of where we are. This is the end of the project. Hopefully everything to the left will be completed, and it is. So, you know, This is you. At the end of every day, you can give yourself a pat on the back. And then everything to the right, we can see. So you can very easily see, how am I? Am I on track? Do I need to catch up? Will we be able to complete all these tasks by the end of the project? So you can just sort of jump into different Gantt charts of your different projects that are more time sensitive. Take a look. It sort of helps you sort of set your mindset, you know, so you can understand exactly what tomorrow should be like. And then reports is where you can sort of check your stats. Now, I think this is really, really important. You can focus on yourself, see how many items you've created. You can see the breakdown of completed versus deadlines versus overdue. Hopefully this gray chunk will get smaller and smaller as you add more due dates, because I think the one thing you can do today to make yourself more productive is add more due dates, because it helps you stay on top of it. Now, of course, you can also see number of completed items per week. And hopefully, you know, as you create more items, this red sliver of overdue items will get smaller and smaller, maybe even non-existent. And then here's the quadrant focus. This is such a great way to understand how you work. Do you spend more time fighting fires, or do you spend more time planning ahead? Right now, it's about equal. So if I'm looking at this, you know, this is a Tuesday night, maybe I want tomorrow. The next time I check this statistic tomorrow, maybe I want 30% in quadrant 1 and 34% in quadrant 2. Maybe by the end of next week, I want it to be down to 20% in quadrant 1. I only spend 20% fighting fires. Maybe, you know, can't do math, but 44% planning ahead. So this is a great way to track and see, how am I doing? How is my workflow? And then, of course, finally, look at top projects once more and create last-minute items for tomorrow and add due dates. So remember, this is where we started. It's so cyclical. It's all, you know, going around in a circle. But we started out this morning in terms of the webinar talking about, you know, things that you remembered and put down so you wouldn't forget. So you remember something, you put it down. And, you know, maybe this webinar is 2 days from now and you don't want to forget. Maybe your instinct is just to stay in the office and do it. But maybe you should actually not listen to that and understand that if you add it here, you add it if you had a due date tomorrow, due tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, this is going to be the first thing you see. It's actually going to get done. You don't have to take any more time out of your day. You can actually go home, relax, and spend time with your family. So again, you know, that final thing is creating last-minute due dates. And of course, if you're, you know, traveling home and you just thought of something, you can pull out your mobile phone app and just pop it in there. All right, so now there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about, and it is the non-routine situations. So here are 2 examples, like I said, emergencies and vacation. And of course, you know, there's a whole myriad of non-routine situations, but I wanted to talk about these 2 because I think that in many ways, you know, we can always deal with emergencies in a slightly more organized and methodical way. I definitely can. And then, of course, vacation, right? Vacation is such a wonderful idea, but it can be ruined if you're spending time stressing about things back at work. So again, I'm just going to jump in, quickly show you what I would do. So let's talk about emergencies first. So what happens when there's a fire? Well, I think that when there is a fire, it's most important to make sure that as many people know about it as possible, because then that means that the chances that the fire will be put out sooner are greatly, greatly increased. So say here's a team project and I suddenly realize, oh my gosh, something's wrong. What? It's a problem like that, right? maybe this is something that we're all going to solve together, or maybe I'm actually responsible for solving this problem. Either way, however, it's important because everybody should know this, right? If someone else is going to help me, or if 10 people are going to help, no matter what, you can invite followers, you can assign it to someone else, or maybe I'm responsible. I can invite someone else, I can invite someone else, I can invite someone else, you know, as many people as possible, all hands on deck, right? So here we are. Now, maybe I'm just responsible for it. It's still important that everyone knows this, because then if I'm running around and suddenly I'm like, hey, you know, maybe I assign this to someone else, I say, hey, can you please start this CQ1 of team project? They're not going to be like, no, write your own pitch. They'll be like, no, I understand. You've got bigger problems. I'm totally got your back. So it's really important, of course, to write down the fires, delegate other important tasks to other team members if necessary, right? If your top priority is putting out that fire, you can put other important items, you can assign them at least momentarily to other people. Then, of course, you can use the notes to explain the situation. Super helpful, add as much context as possible. Then, of course, the history of the item. The item will probably also have files and other resources that will help them get that job done. Now, so this is great. So if you have a fire that you need to take care of, other people can help you. But what if your colleague, John, for example, comes down with appendicitis, and it's like the worst possible week for him to do that, right? So he's under in the hospital, but you know that it has been a super busy week for him. Well, the great thing is if you can see John's project, I'm actually going to filter it not by my items. You can actually look and see what he probably would be worried about if he was conscious and not in surgery at the moment, right? I mean, to be completely honest, you know, that's one of the biggest problems. You know, there are so many people who like, they get sick and then they wake up and they're like, wait, what about that thing? Wouldn't it be great if as a team, you could make sure that there's a culture that allows for people to, you know, have appendicitis and then have fires not completely explode? So, you know, as, you know, a team, you can go to John's project and say, meet with Jerry. Wow, this is important. You can read the context. You can invite other people and decide, hey, you know what? Cody's going to do this. Cody knows what to do. We can loop in other people that can help. So then happily, when John is out of the woods and he is asking about Jerry and whether you've lost the account or whether he's, you know, Jerry's stormed out of the building, you can say, oh, don't worry about it. We got you. And then we can also see prep for meetings, call Tim back. This is also in fire. So, you know, the rest of the team should look into this and support that as well. So again, you know, it's important because these projects can show everyone else what you need in the case of an emergency. You know, when you think of it, what are the projects that you would want someone to look at your matrix and take care of if you were sick? I think that's another great criteria to see, what do I want in my fires? What should go in quadrant 1? Now, next I mentioned vacation, right? So what I actually suggest, and this is similar in terms of creating a culture of, you know, just sort of mutual help and support, you can create a vacation project. So I suggest actually creating a project like this. And then whenever someone's going on vacation, say it's me, for example. Actually, that was just a small reminder for myself. Say this. And this. Say these are the 2 top things. And maybe John's also going on vacation, so here. And we also just need to keep an eye on Charles for John. So I and John can each add our names to different items. So we'd add the tag John here. Bella here. So then you can assign it to different people. So, you know, maybe I'd assign this to Cody. And here. There we are. So these are the items that absolutely need attention even when you're on vacation, right? And you can add due dates. You might know, for example, that Jerry only likes to be called at 9 a.m. in the morning, but not everybody else knows that. So you can think and say, what would I not want to receive a call about on my vacation, and just give that information already. And then the great thing is, when it is, if there's one thing that you need to do, if you need to check in during your vacation, you can just go into Priority Matrix. You can filter it by project. We'll say this has vacation. And then you can also filter it by your items, right? The items that you're having people babysit while you're there. Quickly check in, make sure everything's okay, and jump out, rather than having to go through and look at the entire program. So then, of course, what you can do is you can take your vacation, novel thoughts, you can relax, you can check in on that one project if necessary, then you can come back, and when you're back, you can, of course, take these items back, thank your teammates for being so supportive, reassure them that when they go on vacation, you will also have your back, and everything can sort of go back to normal. But you know that these two items, because they were assigned to someone else while you're on vacation, are not, gone or burnt, or, you haven't lost, you haven't harmed the relationship with someone just because you needed to take 5 days off. Because that is a completely human requirement that, everybody should feel okay doing. Okay, so that's about it. So now I just want to see if we have any other questions that I can answer. Other than that, I do want to assure you that I will have this recording up, and I will also be sharing the slides, and here is my contact info as well that you will have access to. But I'm going to see if we have any more questions. So basically, what you can do there, we have a question, is there a way to enter the actual date a task was completed versus a system-generated automatic date? So basically, in the history of each item, it'll show you when exactly it was completed, right? And then, actually, let me show you here. You can filter by recently finished, so that'll finish it here, so you'll be able to see. In terms of filtering it, I believe that can help you finish it, because it'll help you see when it was finished first. But then, of course, if you go to the due dates, you'll see that it was completed on August 10th, even if it was due at a different time. I hope that answers your question. And then here, I do believe there is an option for a custom filter to answer another question. So I will actually be sharing with you, I believe we do have some info, some support info on that. So keep a lookout, and I will share info on the custom filters with you. Thanks for that question. Yeah, and then we have a question about, is the gray section a bad thing? I'm not quite sure that I understand exactly what that question means, but if you did want to elaborate on that, I would be more than happy to answer your question. And then yes, the recordings will be available for reference. Thank you for asking. I will be sharing this recording on our YouTube page, and then of course the slide deck as well I will be sending to you. Of course, it's my pleasure. Thank you for your great questions. All right. Oh, I understand. Yeah. So if we're talking about the Gantt chart, let me actually go to this one. Thank you so much for your clarification. If we go to all items, and if we go into days, right? This is an item, and it's gray because it's not complete yet. And this is also not complete as well. So the green means it's complete, and then it's, you know, in terms of if it's a bad thing, you know, if it's gray on the left side of the red line, then definitely, you know, that's a bit of a indication that you're a little bit behind in your project. So, you know, it can sort of spur you to make sure that you catch up. So yes, I would say in terms of keeping track of a project, yes, the gray means it's not done yet. Now, if it needs to be done in 2 weeks and it's still not done, I mean, that's understandable, right? But if it is closer to the red line, it means it's coming up and it needs to be done, or if it's to the left, it means it's overdue. And then I do have one more question about tags. Basically, yeah, let me quickly give just a little bit more info on that. So the tagging feature is the way we help you organize. So for example, this webinar account that I created so I wouldn't overwhelm you with everything else happening in my life and all the notifications between our team, I only have 6 projects here, right? Of course, I can filter it very easily down to 1 project or 2 projects. And that is so great, or 1 project, right? And that's so great because it helps me not only conceptually prioritize, but visually prioritize as well. Now, I have 150 projects in my actual Affluence account, but I have 4 projects that I work in most of the time. Everything else are side projects, things that I want to keep open, coaching projects that I create with people. But when it's the beginning of the day, I have a particular tag, and I use that to filter down to those top projects, right? Now, those are the project tags, which are the macro projects that help you sort of move and filter by the larger project. We also have the micro project tags, micro tags, which go based on items. So let's just jump back to our master list. And you can add a tag to any of these items. So for example, I added team plan, Bella, starred. Just gonna go to there. So now we can actually filter this list by a particular type of tag. For example, I like to add the tag email to all my emails. So now I can actually go and I can see the entire list of emails that I have over all my projects. So maybe I have 20 emails in my entire priority matrix at the moment. I can actually, you know, knock them all out if I want to focus on just emails or just calls, etc. So then you would filter project tags to the left here, and you would filter item tags to the right here. Thanks so much for that question. All right, it looks like we don't have any more questions, but thank you so much. Everyone was so involved, and I'm, you know, really grateful for your questions. It really helps me understand where I should maybe focus a little bit more and what I can reiterate or give a little bit more detail into. So thank you so much. You've been such a great audience. Thank you for your involvement. I will be in contact with you. Please don't hesitate, of course, to reach out to me. There's my number and there's my email. And of course, I will be sharing this slide deck with you soon, and then also uploading this recording to YouTube. So again, I'm going to call it a day. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and thanks so much.